Animation tools and keyframing are found throughout the Vegas program. With them, you can not only create effects that move or change size or shape, but you can also create effects that change parameters. And that means like color or background or outline over the course of your event or track. Let's take a look at a basic video effect, or actually a couple of video effects, and let's create some keyframed animations with them. We've got a couple of events here on our timeline, and let's go down and we'll grab our film effect from our list of video effects. And the film effect, of course, can make a video look like an old time video or maybe an old scratched up, beat up film. We have our first event here on our timeline, some birds flying over the ocean. And if we apply, for instance, our very old film effect preset, and drag it down onto the clip, we see that now our video looks like an old beat up video. Just close that for a second, and if I press L, you can see our scratchy old beat up black and white video. By using keyframed animation, though, we can create a transition where we go from this old beat up video into a fresh, new, clean video. Let's open up our option panel here for our video effect by clicking on the Event Effects button. At the bottom of the Video Effects option panel, we have a button that says Animate. Now, this is one of the older effects, and the older effects have an Animate button at the bottom. You'll see as we play with some of the other video effects that they have a way to keyframe individual characteristics rather than to keyframe the effect or animate the effect overall. So I'll click the Animate button, and that should open up this little keyframe controller, which is sort of a miniature timeline that represents the duration of our clip. And you see at the beginning of the timeline is a little diamond. This diamond represents the current setting for our video effect. That means all of these settings here for grain, tint, type of particles, and the amount of the particles, all of those are represented in that little keyframe. So I'm going to drag that keyframe out to just before our playhead is positioned. And then I'm going to change the level of my effect. Now, what I'd like to do is just remove everything from it, and I could do that by sliding each of these sliders back to 0, but the easiest way to do is go up to Preset and set it to None. And when I set it to None, if you notice down on the keyframe controller timeline, we have added automatically a second keyframe. I'm going to also disable particles on here, the little scratches. This keyframe represents the new effect setting for our particular effect. In this case, it's reset to None, so this new effect is no effect. And between these two keyframes, we will now see a transition as the movie goes from an old, beat-up, black and white, scratchy movie to a nice, clean movie. So we'll move the playhead back just a little bit here in our scratchy movie area, and I'm going to press L to play it, and you will watch the transition between those two keyframes or between the two settings for that particular effect. So you can transition from one set of settings to another. That's one form of animation. Let's go to our next clip here. We've got two guys sitting on the beach. I'm going to apply to this event the wave effect. That's way down here at the bottom, the wave effect. And I'm going to add large waves. You can see kind of a preview of what it looks like. We'll add that onto the clip. And you can see it kind of makes everybody look a little bit wavery. And by clicking the Animate button on the Video Effects option panel, we can open up the keyframe controller. There it is. And you can see that this keyframe controller represents the settings for the wave. I'm going to move the playhead so it's much closer to the initial keyframe setting. That's that little diamond right there at the beginning. And we're going to change these settings just a little bit. Change the horizontal waves, the vertical wave amplitude, just make it a little wavery. And you see it creates automatically a second keyframe. We'll move the playhead down just a little bit, and we'll adjust these again. And then we'll create one more, and this one will reset to None. I'll select that right from my preset menu at the top of the panel, and now we're back to normal. So what we're essentially doing is creating sort of a transition out of maybe a flashback sequence where things kind of waver in. So at the beginning, we're going to see the initial keyframe setting for the waver, a couple of changes in the wavering, and then finally, after about a second and a half, we'll be back to normal. So let's close the option panel, reset the playhead back to the beginning of the clip, and when I press the L button, you'll see the animation. Very cool. So you can create an animation in which things change shape. You can use the crop, for instance, animation, and you can set it so that what's cropped in your video changes. We can create waverings. We can create swirls that are animated now by changing the settings and creating new keyframes on that little animation keyframe controller at the bottom of the panel. Let me show you one more. This one's a little out of the box. This is one that is not what the effect is designed to do, but it's kind of cool that you can do it anyway. We have a video here of our beach. Going to move the playhead right back to the beginning of the video. And then we'll apply to it our lens flare effect. There's our lens flare. and I'm going to select the 35mm lens flare. And the lens flare effect is designed to look as if light is shining back at the camera, and that's usually what it's used for, is to create maybe a glint or a twinkle on your video frame. We're going to use it for something completely different, though. By keyframing the position of our lens flare, we're going to create the illusion of a meteor or a flying saucer flying across the sky. So to do that, right here at the beginning of our event, we're going to change the position of the light source. And you can see that the light position is one of the characteristics right here on our option panel. And to change this position, rather than use the option panel here, I can just click right on the crosshair on my preview panel, drag it right up to the upper right corner. That's it entering the frame. I could also do the same thing right here, of course, on the option panel by dragging it up to the upper right corner. And to open the keyframe controller to create the animation, I now will create animations for, this is one of the newer effects, for the individual characteristic. And I can do that by clicking on this little clock icon, and that opens up the keyframe controller. So now I can do my animation. This is the present location for the lens flare. That's what's represented on the keyframe controller by diamonds and circles. That represents the current position of our lens flare. Now let's move about maybe 5-6 seconds into the video. We'll move our playhead, and we'll take this and drag our lens flare to a second position off the edge of the video frame. So now what we have is an animation where it moves across our video frame. There's our flying saucer or shooting star, depending on what sound effect you put behind it. And now what we need to do is make it disappear. And so to do that, I'm going to select the keyframe controller for its intensity. Click on that button, and you see now that they're added to my timeline or added to my keyframe controller, our keyframes for intensity. I'm going to move this intensity setting right to our current position because I don't want that to change prior to this point. So in other words, I want my lens flare to look as it does right now to this point. Then right after this point, I'm going to move the playhead just a little bit, and I'm going to set intensity to 0. Boom. Now my lens flare is gone completely. So we will see the lens flare as it moves across the screen, and then once it gets to the edge of the screen, it will disappear. Like I say, you would add maybe some dramatic music and maybe some sound effects to this, and you would have a real nice flying saucer or shooting star effect. Move my playhead back to the beginning of the clip, and let's watch our lens flare move across the screen. I'll press the L to play it. Vegas comes with a very nice package of video effects, and these effects do things from change colors to effects that distort shapes or cookie cutters or effects that add visual elements like a lens flare, and you can animate any one of them. You can create a number of interesting effects by doing that. Some form interesting transitions, like that wavering sort of thing, while others, like the lens flare, can actually add a new moving object as a special effect to your video. Very cool, a lot of fun to play with.